Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heal with Kat podcast. My name is Kat. I am your host, and I am so excited to welcome you to this week's episode. Not only is it thought provoking, and it'll definitely challenge some of the more religious beliefs that you may have grown up in, but it will also help you find inner peace and stillness. My guest this week is David Youngren, a spiritual philosopher, storyteller, author, and philanthropist. He has inspired over 1 million people at all of the live events and with all of the books that he's written as well. He is incredibly accomplished, and not only that, has a meaningful and heart-centered and powerful story to back up all of the work that he's doing, and we get into all of that on this week's episode. It's definitely one that you will not want to miss. Now, this isn't an episode for just people who grew up in a religious family. We talk about way more than just religion. We talk about quantum healing. He goes into explaining what the observational theory is and quantum entanglement, and then we make these crazy connections between quantum entanglement and being in the quantum field in family constellation therapy. And we do talk a lot about Jesus, but through a very spiritual lens. Like I said, it's going to be thought-provoking. It's going to make you think. It might challenge you a little bit, but you'll walk away feeling a lot of love and hopefully really inspired. So with that, welcome my guest on this week's episode, David Youngren. Everyone, please help me welcome David Youngren to the Heal with Kat podcast. David, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Kat, for having me. It's such a joy and honor for me to be with you, and really looking forward to this conversation today.
Same. I think a lot of the things that you talk about in terms of religion and dogma and spirituality and Jesus, like there was a lot of crossover in my work with family constellation and how we talk about things. And I know you mentioned that too. So I'm really excited to see what you're teaching us today. I would love to just start the conversation with you telling us a little bit about your background, how you got into this work. What about life has shaped you into who you are?
Well, it's a great question, first of all, and I was raised in a Christian home, and then at an early age, I went to Bible college. I became a trained minister, and started speaking around the world to build a great church. Was the president of a Bible college. A lot of different things went on in my life, and but inside I was struggling. Inside I was dealing with a plethora of different issues, and I thought, well, this is not really working the way I'm supposed to be working, and what I'm telling everybody, this belief system that I have basically inherited, but also have spent so much of my time developing and learning more about. And here I am, and I'm very successful. And I looked around even among the people that I knew who were very successful, some of the most, I guess, famous names within this Christian world. And I realized there are some people there who live a different life than they present to the world. And I thought, this is not, if this is true, it's not really working. So I remember one time it kind of started for me in 2004. I decided I wanted to have some kind of a time with quote unquote God, that he would speak to me, that I would have some kind of a great learning experience. And I decided I would go to the golf course. And I asked the person at the counter there, or who was helping me, I said, can I play by myself? He said, there's nobody else around, so you can play by yourself. This is great. So I just wanted to have peace and quiet. And I arrived at the first tee off, and I noticed a gentleman 500 yards away that was just putting at the end of this first hole. And I thought, I'm going to take my time because I don't want to play with this guy, and in case he would ask, right? And so I took my time, arrived at the second hole, and there was a bench, and there he was sitting, waiting for me. And I thought, oh my gosh, he now wants to play with me. Sure enough, he asked me, do you want to play? And of course, I couldn't be rude and say no. So I said yes. But deep inside, I thought, well, I'm going to tell him everything that I believe and get him converted to my way of seeing and believing in the world, which is really what religion does, right? And so I spent my 17 holes, I guess, or whatever it was, just trying to speak to him and convince him of my superior, quote unquote, beliefs. But there was something about this gentleman. He didn't see the world. He wasn't caught up in belief system. He wasn't thinking in the terms of, oh, this is right and this is wrong and this dogma is right and that dogma is wrong. He wasn't thinking like that, but he exuded this incredible sense of warmth and love and peace. And I said, how can this be? He doesn't believe, he doesn't see the world like I do. And he has more of this love. If you associate Jesus with love, he has more of this love than I do. And he doesn't even believe like I do, or he doesn't have the same religious beliefs. And he still exudes this peace and warmth. And I was taken in by it. And but you kind of move on and forget about things. And then this was back in Canada, by the way. I was in 2004. Then 2008. Now I was in the United States. I lived here in San Diego, and I'm sitting overlooking the kind of I was overlooking the valley, and I started thinking to myself, I am not free. I have all these toxic emotions. I have all this anxiety. I have this worry. I have this plethora of negative emotions that I'm dealing with. And I'm looked around thinking, nobody's free in my Christian world. And Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And I thought, well, I thought I knew the truth. I thought my belief system was the truth, but it's not making me free. So if you want to have some kind of a logical thought in this whole equation, then you have to admit, if Jesus is correct, unless this is a total lie, if Jesus is correct and I'm not free, that means that I must be missing something about the truth. And then I had another experience of meditation. I started meditating, and the more I began to meditate and come to a place of inner stillness, come to a place of just inner peace, where I just became aware of presence. I became present in the now. And I just sat there in that presence. And this went on for years. I just noticed that many of the old ways of seeing, the belief systems and the way I saw the world, began to fade away. And I just became aware of this loving, peaceful, that's the best way to describe it, presence, like I had seen in this golfer who didn't believe anything like I did. I began to notice that there was a big shift. And then I just became, I guess, more open to anything. The belief system were not that important. What was really important was experience this inner freedom of peace and love, and living just a joyful life, and to have mental well-being. And so that's kind of my journey into from that religious world to more the spiritual world of that deals more with an inner experience and awakening within to something that is vast and awe-inspiring.
This is why I was excited to have you on. I have full body chills. This is incredible. I relate very deeply to your story in a way where I was raised in a very Catholic home, and there was a lot of religion and a lot of right and wrong. You're good if you do this, you're bad if you do this. There was not really a lot of that, like, why? What's the humanness behind this? Where is the disconnect outside of the religion? And so I grew up, I always was really skeptical of Jesus. And I've shared this on the podcast before. I wasn't sure if I trusted male authority or Jesus. Everything about it was really weird to me. But I'm very, very deeply devoted to Mother Mary. So I go on my healing journey, and one day I'm meditating and I'm speaking to my spirit guides, and all of a sudden Jesus pops in my meditation. And I'm like, what are you doing here? I don't work with you. I don't like working with you. And he's like, just want to tell you, I'm happy. I'm proud of you. You're doing all this great work. Okay, see you later. And I was like, okay, that was really weird. Fast forward into my spiritual journey, and I spent so many years running away from Jesus, only to find that he is a huge part of the work that I do in family constellation therapy, and a huge guide in my life as well. So it's interesting as well, because my family's very religious. And sometimes I feel that in order for me to connect and belong with them, I must also be religious. And yet I am not religious at all. I don't consider myself to be Catholic, and I'm the closest to Jesus I've ever been in my life. So I just love you share your story, because I feel it's so synonymous.
Well, it's incredible. What a great story you have, by the way. It's very interesting, because there's so many of us who feel the same way. There's something about Jesus that speaks to love, that speaks to unconditional, selfless love. and a peace that surpasses understanding. It surpasses the mind game. And Jesus was really not a very religious person in that sense. Of course, he dealt within the religious culture and so on. But when you really just experience this love, Jesus becomes like a archetype for us all, and so yeah,
Well, and I'll just throw this in here as well. You said cultural, which made me think of this. I'm half Lebanese. My
yeah,
father's family is from Lebanon. And in the Middle East, it's very hard for people who don't live in the Middle East to kind of consider this way of being, but you're identified by your religion. So, like when people meet you in Lebanon, when I went to Lebanon, people ask me, are you Muslim or are you Christian? People are identified and they belong based on a spiritual or religious group. And I think that that trickled into just the way that people viewed Jesus and his identification and who he's acceptable for and who he's not acceptable for. But I love that, there's also people in this world who believe like me, he far surpasses religion, which is
yeah.
ideally it's man-made in many ways, and like this cult almost. I want to go back to your personal story for a moment. It sounds like you really were struggling with like a spiritual trap or like a feeling mentally trapped of some kind. And I think, like you said, a lot of people can really relate to that. I know I can relate to that. So why do you think so many people have these like mental and spiritual traps that they're struggling with? Do you think it's for belonging, or do you think that religion gives people some kind of feeling that we're all searching for and they just go through religion? I don't know, does that make question land, like make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think in many ways, if you think of fear and love being completely outside the realm of fear, I think religion is essentially built on fear. It's fear of what will happen when you die. It's fear of missing something out. It's, we have all these different things, fear of hell or whatever it is. We've been programmed since childhood to somehow or another be afraid. And we are afraid at a deep level of what will happen to us. And and that and then fear, of course, leads to control. And in order to feel secured, in order to feel more secure, you have to control your own path. And so that also spills into religion and the religious leaders. Many religious leaders are very insecure people. They need certainty in their life. They had a troubled childhood, for example. Many of the most well-known preachers you have out there had a very uncertain childhood. They had a lot of trauma. And so they were looking for security to somehow or another quiet the voice within, to quiet the voice of fear, that they're deeply afraid, deeply insecure about the world. And that always leads to suffering, and that always leads to inner turmoil, that always leads to these voices in your head. Like we have all these voices in our head that tell different stories. Sometimes we are the hero and sometimes we are the victim, sometimes we are somewhere in between. So we have all these different stories that continually flood our minds, and they all of course come from our childhood experiences, and many of them come from fear, or I should say, a lot of it. The majority is birthed out of an inner sense of fear or feeling that I'm not enough. So religion perpetuates that problem. Religion reinforces that. Religion provides a path, so to speak, through, okay, if you believe this way, then everything will be okay. But when it doesn't live up to its billing, then it creates even more confusion and doubt in people's mind. But I think that's a good thing, because ultimately, I think spirituality is something that is very important. And when you become aware of this, what I call, when you become aware of this inner presence, consciousness, uh, when you, to me, just being aware of this inner love and peace, even in the world that we're living in today, there's so much turmoil, there's so much chaos and so many things going on. But when you just come to a place of inner stillness, it just transforms your worldview and how you see things.
What I've observed in my my family, my friends, like people in my life that I have met who are quite religious, it feels like it provides guardrails for living a worthy life or like an appropriate life. Like almost as if, as you said so beautifully, the inner turmoil and the inner guide is so confused and so lost that the promises of what religion, like you said, bills or provides, it gives people some kind of safety. If I adhere to this religion, I'll be okay. If I adhere to this religion and these rules, I'll be safe. And the psychological part of my brain says, well, we need some of that as human beings. Every kind of order, we need order, you know, in order to like have peace. But then we also like, I feel like religion misses out on the like freedom and like the ability to connect beyond those rules. So I think you totally touched on that.
Well, it's interesting with Jesus. Jesus essentially presented a new way of being that was not based on rules, not based on commandments, but he said the only commandment is to love one another. And and ultimately, if we truly come to a place of inner awareness, and I think that love is ultimately the warmth we feel when we sense a sense of oneness with one another, when we connect. There is a love because we are connecting. So when that happens, we really don't need rules or morals to tell us how to live in that sense. If we are truly guided by this, what Jesus said, you shall know the truth. And later on, I came to know that this word for truth is an inner light arising in the present moment. A light is that which illuminates. So and which speaks back to meditation again, when you become completely present and now you allow that light consciousness to become free from all the attachments of who you are. You're just present. You are consciousness, you are spirit, or you are not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you are not this picture you've created of yourself, this story that you have made of yourself. That's not who you are. I'm not my physical being. I look completely different than I did when I was 5 years old. I was born in Sweden, and so I'm nothing like that. I don't think the same way, but yet I'm still here. And what is the I am? It's that pure, unattached spirit consciousness. When we become conscious of that, when our focus, when our attention is on that, there is a transformation that takes place. And as Nick in the story earlier, the golfer, he exuded love and peace. He exuded graciousness. He exuded a sense of compassion and empathy for others. And when that becomes the guiding light of our lives, a lot of these things that we have created laws and rules for are no longer needed. In fact, the laws and rules actually makes us want to do the opposite. If you're told you cannot do something, you really want to do it. If you're told you cannot go inside that room and check out that, well, you really want to check what's inside that room. If it says only for no one that's allowed to enter, well, you really want to enter and to see what's in there. So the law or the rules, religious rules, actually makes you want to, and I use the word now, the religious term sin, it makes us want to sin. But love kind of frees you. It frees you to just be. And you're accepted. You're always accepted. You're always whole. You're at the very core. So it's just a matter of tuning into that dimension, tuning into something deeper than what our minds have uh, kind of thought we were. And just tuning into that deeper essence of the light, the truth, which is nothing to do with the belief system, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And what it brings up that I'm thinking about, there's two things I want to touch on. From a psychological and a vibrational perspective, in family constellation therapy, we look at trauma creating chaos in a family system, and that chaos in the family system needs order. And that's what family constellation helps people do, is bring order back into the family system through love. And I imagine that if people are not spiritually aware or conscious, that there's this trauma of chaos happening inside of them, and the religion gives them the structure that they're looking for, but it only takes them so far. The second thing I want to touch on, and that's not for everyone, by the way, but that's just the way that I look at it. The second thing I want to touch on is how fascinating that you went to Bible college and you studied the Bible and you were so steeped in the Bible itself, and what an interesting process it must have been for you to then dissect it and translate it through this new lens of spirituality that you have. And what was that process like for you? Did you see it differently?
It takes time. It's a process, of course. I had an experience, and I could share that with you. I had an experience in 2005, which was actually before I had 2008 when I said, what is the truth? So before that, in 2005, I had just moved. We moved in 2005 to United States. And I was very angry. I was upset with people that done me wrong. And I was also dealing with my own guilt and feelings of shame. And so I was dealing with this plethora of negative emotions. And I remember suddenly started having these cluster headaches. Now, a lot of people have never heard of cluster headaches. According to Google, and I usually joke with people, it's the worst pain a human can suffer. And then all the women who have given birth, they say, you have no idea what you're talking about, buddy. And I get it. I don't. But I'm just telling them, I read it on the internet. And of course, if whatever you read on the internet, it got to be true, right? So the pain, the point is there was an incredible pain that I had. The pain was so severe that I felt like someone was sticking a knife in my eye and just twisting it around. And I would lay and scream. I said, I don't want to live. I want to die. I can't live like this. This is horrible. And in the beginning, it like this would happen, for anywhere from 45 minutes to 3 hours. So in the beginning, it would happen like every second day. And then it started happening every day. And then it started happening multiple times a day. And I was completely, I said, what in the world? What have I done wrong? Like you always internalize something. I've done something wrong. And, maybe God is angry at me or something like that. Or, why are these things happening to me? That was my religious kind of training to think like that. And then one day, it was in 2006, I'm walking down these set of stairs, and I've come from tradition where meditation was something that was frowned upon. That was something that was like, you don't go there. It's like, you don't do that kind of thing here. But I had this, like, I don't know what it was like thought that rose out from the inside of me, meditate. And I didn't know what meditation was. And so I remember going inside the car, and I sat down in my car, slumped into my seat, completely devastated, thinking, I can't live like this. And I said, well, how do I meditate? So I closed my eyes. And then I began to visualize. I thought visualization, meditation was some form of visualization. So I began to visualize. And as you said, I had this image of Jesus standing before me. And he saw right through me, everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I felt complete love, a complete sense of love, that there was nothing wrong. And then I sat there, and within 2 minutes, the pain had disappeared and basically never returned since. Now, people say, why did that happen? Because I'm sure that in my mind, there were so many things with the guilt and the shame and that had been activated in my brain. And suddenly when I had this inner awareness of this love, this incredible love, that suddenly, of course, all those neural networks were freed somehow or another. I don't know if I can explain it correctly, but something happened in my brain that caused that to disappear. And now we are, and this is 2005, 2006. So now we're 19 years since this happened, and I never had cluster headaches since. So that was the beginning for me, another starting point for me to come to a place of, there is something deeper. There is something beyond the religious belief system. I was trained in that, but coming to a place of inner awareness. And so I began to study science. I began to study neuroscience, quantum physics. And I realized, oh, wow, there are so many parallels. And then I began to study Jesus in the Aramaic, and I realized, oh, this is different. And I began to study some other wisdom traditions of all kinds, and I realized, oh, wow, there's a recurring theme here that we have missed, that my religious background didn't teach me, but actually I find in Jesus, that actually I find in quantum physics, that actually explains part of the neuroscience, and that I find in some of my Buddhist friends and Hindu friends, and yeah, it's all over there.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us too. That's a really personal and beautiful story. And I think it goes to show the power of Jesus's love. And it's a perfect segue into your book, Life Ascending, because I want to talk about your background with weaving together science and spirituality and psychology. Is that, was that experience a turning point for knowing that you also wanted to write a book? Or when did you, like, what's the spark that led you to write it? Hey everyone, it's Kat from the podcast with a little break in today's episode to share with you a really exciting offering I have called the Age Mapping 3-Day Mini Course. In just 3 days, we'll uncover the stories hidden in your family's past. By mapping the ages of key moments of trauma within your lineage, you'll begin to see how those moments could still be influencing your life today at those same ages. On day 1, you'll experience my powerful ancestral subconscious meditation. On day 2, we'll dive into the age mapping exercise. And lastly, on day 3, you'll geek out with me on the topic of epigenetics, which can explain the way that trauma is passed down generation after generation. The entire workshop is only $35. Are you ready to dive into your ancestral stories and heal for good? Go to katdow.com/agemap or visit the link in the show notes below. Your transformation starts with understanding your past right now.
Well, I basically written a number of books in my life, and it's all kind of changed depending on my evolution of thought and thinking. But this latest book, Life Ascending, I went through this process. I began to experience a deeper healing. I began to experience, and then I decided, you know what, I resigned from being a pastor. I stopped doing a lot of those different things. And I said, no, I just want to spend time in meditation, learning and studying and seeing this from so many different traditions. And I realized that in almost every wisdom tradition, there is a mystical aspect of spirituality that is an experiential. Mystical simply means experiential, that is not so concerned with doctrine or dogma, but more concerned with, as I said, this inner sense of peace. And then I began to think, well, what is this? Like, what is this inner peace? Like, I like science. I like to study. I like to have proof. So I had this experience. I had this inner freedom, and I just realized, oh wow, this is so incredible. But what is it? And how do I make sense of it? So that then led to a few years of just thinking and reflecting on these things. And I go for a walk every day, and I would think about these things, and I speak about them. And I thought I need to write a book about this whole process, and to kind of, sometimes, we have all these thoughts and we really don't know how to articulate them very well because it takes time. So the book really helped me put it in on paper, how it all fits together.
And it's the journey of moving into inner stillness and presence. So you're guiding people through the book, to my understanding, about how to create this beautiful experience that you've cultivated and experienced. You're helping other people do that as well.
Yes, exactly. It's a guide. So I'm using different stories, different concepts to help people come to a place of inner stillness and experience a deeper sense of love. I mean, yeah, you're
Well,
absolutely right. I think
can
you explained it better than I just did.
well, I was going to say, can you tease the audience a little bit with some concepts from the book that would really kind of support them, and then they can pick up the book, if they want to continue the journey
Yeah,
with it?
absolutely. Well, the whole premise of the book, Life Ascending, of course, is that I remember one time I was have a charity in Africa, and I remember we're going to this city, and then they closed the airport to fly into the city, and I would have to fly to another airport, and I would drive through some of the worst roads ever invented for about 8 hours to get there. There were potholes. You like constantly sitting there in fear you're going to be hit or something was going to happen, and you were just jumping up and down on these Land Cruisers. It was a horrible experience. And my inner world was in chaos. And then one day I learned I could actually just, there was a private company that would fly all across Tanzania. So I just contacted them and said, "Yeah, we can fly into that city." And it was like $180. And I thought, well, God, this is a steal. I'm taking that. And so I flew this 8 hour drive through some of the worst roads possible. And I flew that, and it took me like an hour on this small little Cessna. And I looked down and I saw how beautiful everything is. It was a complete difference in how I viewed reality. And that led me to think about what happens when our inner world is transformed. The way we perceive reality, the way we look at reality, is a reflection of our inner world. So if our inner world is transformed, then we will look at reality differently. We will look at what's happening around us differently. We look at people differently. So it's all governed by how we feel on the inside. And then I began to think about, what is it? Why do we see the world the way we do? Well, it's, as you talked about, your Catholic upbringing, my Christian upbringing, my evangelical upbringing. We have been essentially programmed since birth. And we have had experience. Some of them have been traumatic, some of them have been joyful. But even as a child, before your brain had been fully developed, for example, when you were 2 months old, you don't have a memory of what it's like being 2 months old, because your neocortex, or the upper part of your brain, had not been fully developed. But you do have the emotional memories. So you feel certain things and you don't even know why, because there were things that were happening in that early childhood that then has lodged itself onto what I call the cerebellum. I'll have a little model of the brain. So here's the cerebellum, which is the subconscious part of your brain that's habit forming and behavior forming. So the way we see the world, so here is the neocortex, here is the upper part of the brain, your thinking, your logical part of the brain. Sorry, I didn't show it here. This is a logical part of the end. This is your emotional brain. So you process emotions that send signals to your body. And then here is the, of course, the cerebellum, which is habit forming, and basically your subconscious that then controls how we think and what we do. So then how do you transform that? How do you change all this programming that's taking place? You can try to get new ideas, but that takes a long time. It's a very long process. And so then I began to think about life and quantum physics. There's a theory called quantum entanglement, and I don't want to hopefully bore your audience with
No,
it.
I love this stuff. Please
So,
explain it. I'm like excited.
so you have quantum entanglement. But what does that mean? Well, quantum entanglement means that you have two atoms that have been connected, and then one kind of disappears and appears on Mars somewhere, but they're still linked together. So if one does one thing, the other one, like if one spins one way, the other one spins the opposite way. So they're always doing this, like they're always connected somehow or another, but they are light years apart. And we know that communication travels at the speed of light, but they are light years apart. How can it be instant? And then, of course, we have the observer effect. So you take a particle. If it's not observed, it disappears. And where is it? Well, it's in a place of nowhere. It exists in a state of possibility, they say. It's a wave state. But it doesn't exist. It says nowhere at the same time everywhere until it is observed. When it's observed, now it enters into our three-dimensional world and into matter. Consciousness, in other words, is what causes this informational field, this mind-like field, to appear in matter, or to become matter, to become particle. So what is it? What is it? Consciousness. There has to be an observer. There has to be a witness. And at the very core, you and I, we are consciousness. One day when we die, our body's going to be in a casket. The body's still there, but you're no longer conscious. There's no sense of life. So we always assume the Newtonian or mechanistic worldview has been that, okay, that matter creates consciousness. Somehow or another, brain creates consciousness. But a lot of scientists now propose that, no, it's not true at all. what happens is it's more like a receiver. Your brain acts more like a receiver. And I actually believe the heart acts like a receiver too, a receiver of consciousness. So there's plenty of evidence for that. And so what I'm suggesting is what happens when you become aware of that? When you become aware of that deeper essence, your brain basically is the biggest problem people have. This thing is has been programmed, has darkened or made you unaware of this deeper dimension within you. So how do we become aware? How do we come to a place of being aware of that sense of deeper uh, consciousness, which ultimately we can call God? How do we become aware of that and recognize that we are ultimately one with God? And when what happens when we become aware of that? We become aware of, obviously, of love and peace. And how does that then transform the way we think and see the world? So that is, in a nutshell, what I go through in of course through the book in many different ways to help people understand, how do I awaken to this truth? How do I become aware of this deeper essence that of who I am? And how can I know myself, know thyself? How can I know that deep essence of me? And how does this affect this brain? How does it affect how I see the world? And yeah, so it's basically 300 pages of a lot of stuff in there. And I hope I explained at least a little bit of what it's about.
I'm obsessed, and obsessed is even in the right word. Okay, so quantum entanglement is a really beautiful scientific explanation for what family constellation therapy is and how I view ancestral trauma. So thank you for sharing that, because I had heard of that before, but the way that you described it really like grounded for me understanding like the way that my like spirit guides and spirit team, like my spiritual teachers have showed me ancestral healing is that, let's just say that I have trauma around abandonment. When I do a family constellation therapy session, I'm standing on pieces of paper that represent my families. They're not there with me. But when I stand on the paper, I'm in a quantum field we call the morphogenic field, which I open. And I don't know how, but I was taught through my training. It's like, it's really simple, but it creates this space where if I stand on this piece of paper, I start to channel and embody a certain person. And as a facilitator, I decide what goes on that paper. So the client doesn't know. You stand on a piece of paper and you basically channel the person, the thing, the place, the energy of what that is. And it totally makes sense with quantum entanglement, because when we're healing ancestral trauma, if I have a wound of abandonment and somebody else in the family system also carries that wound of abandonment, spirit has showed me that that's a connection. It's a vibration, like roots that grow out into the family system. And so when you heal it for you, it ripples out into the family system for all of the other people who struggle with abandonment. So is that quantum entanglement? Like, is it a shared vibration or a shared experience that everyone is living in?
I definitely think that there's a sense of oneness. When I studied the whole idea of quantum physics, I read a book by Heinrich Pace. He's a physicist. And he spoke, the book is called The One. And he essentially says that, because when you talk about quantum entanglement, he says that there is a oneness to the universe. And ultimately, we all part of this one. We're not separate. See, the brain makes us perceive the world as separate entities. But at the core, we're all one. We are one. We're all one at the very core, at the very deep essence. And I think when you begin to meditate, when you come to that place, so I like what you're saying. That's very interesting, because you are basically coming back to that point of going that deep when you now, and we can use many different words. Everybody has their own words. Like, that doesn't matter. Everybody connects with different words. To me, words are uh, just very simple ways trying to explain something that is much deeper. So it sounds like, what, if I'm understanding you correctly, that this kind of, you enter into this realm of quantum world, as you call it, quantum world, where you become at peace with this inner energy. This, you come to a place of inner stillness. You come to a place of peace. Then now you allow that peace to flow into the memory of the trauma, and also to previous generations and to also to other family members.
There's two parts to it. Like the first part, when we stand on the pieces of paper, we're kind of discovering what the trauma is and how everyone feels about the trauma. It's more like a discovery part of the session. But at the end, we do healing statements. So we speak to the people or the energies on the paper, and we say words of healing so that the trauma, as you're saying, we find this place of forgiveness, love, compassion. That's why I work with Christ consciousness and inner stillness or presence, and being present with the abuser or the country that wronged us, or the word anger. Like we can work with so many different vibrations. But oh my God, this is really.
Well, that's very fascinating. I think this is I wrote in my book, in the epilogue, I wrote about a meditation practice that I've used sometimes. It's not my most common one, but I use it quite often. But it seems similar concept, where I visualize, first of all, I visualize Jesus, and I speak to him. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. And then I look at like he's speaking to me, and I kind of, may you be happy, speaking to me. So I internalize this, and may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering. And then I think of my friends, family, all the people, loved ones. And then I think about the people who have offended me, the people who have done me wrong. Then I think about people of all different cultures and religions, and I speak this blessing over people. It's like you're releasing a blessing, a vibration, an energy, and I'm releasing it. I don't know how it's changing them, but I know it's changing my attitude about them. And if my attitude is changed about them, the way I think or treat them will ultimately change, and that somehow or another, I'm sure, will have an impact on them too. So is that something like similar idea?
You just nailed what healing statements are. It's not really always about the other person. It's about healing it's about you mostly getting the healing from the experiences that you have with the people that, as you said earlier so beautifully, we create these stories around the experiences that we go through about ourselves and about the world and life and all of that. And the healing statements are really a way to find inner freedom and love. So connect back to freedom and love and our authentic selves, like our authentic truths. And then as a result of us embodying that in this energy field, then the people that we're speaking to, or the things or the places that we're speaking to, they benefit as well, because love, as powerful as it is, it ripples out into those people, places, or things. And it's like, this is stuff that I haven't even really got into with family constellation therapy, like this deep. So I really appreciate this conversation, like really in a heart-centered way, because so many people come to FCT and they really just want to talk about how they can be free, and and that's great. That's why I got into this work. But there's a secondary benefit that happens in this energy field that I don't always focus on, but it is also freeing and giving love to the people that are also shackled and chained by the same pain that you're carrying. And I just think that a lot of people aren't ready to have that kind of conversation, because I think we live in a world that's hyper independent. Our egos protect us. We have a lot of defense mechanisms, and we are afraid of connection. We don't understand belonging and what that truly means. And we are not sure what authenticity means. And so I think people use these really cool things on the outside to protect them from the concept that actually you can be loving and you also are helping other people heal, even if you don't have a good relationship with them. Does that make sense? Like if you're in the field with an abuser or like a difficult parent, you don't want to think that you're helping them, because you still are managing all of your own emotions around it. But at the end of the day, we are in a quantum field and everyone's benefiting from it.
It's interesting when I hear you speak. I'm thinking back about something that I learned through studying Aramaic of Jesus. Jesus said this, and people find this confusing. Pray in my name, and so he's praying in my name. So people think, well, we got to pray in the name of Jesus, like it's some kind of magical thing. You're going to pray in the name of Jesus. Well, when you study the Aramaic, what the word prayer means meditation, by the way. Prayer and meditation were the same word. So it was not like a difference in words. So there was much more of a meditative, like the Eastern religious idea to prayer. But of course, Jesus was raised in an Eastern background, right? And but the word in my name had a different connotation. So the word name wasn't just like, oh, there's some magic in the name. It was what you're talking about, the vibration, in my atmosphere, in my sound. So when he's saying meditate in my sound, in my vibration, what is that vibration? It's peaceful, it's loving, it's gracious. So in a sense, he says, meditate or be still in my vibration, because it's going to bring wholeness to you as well as it is as I am whole, as it brought wholeness to me. And it kind of change. You notice what a big difference that is, but it's similar to what you're talking about. When you bathe in that kind of inner vibration, that peaceful vibration, it's like an energy field that is a little higher, and this loving presence. Well, when you talk to somebody, when you meet somebody, it's bound to uh, impact them as well. Because if you carry peace within you, I don't know if you heard of, I'm sure you have heard of Eckhart Tolle, of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always amazed when I listen to him that he sits down in a chair, starts talking, and I immediately feel this peace, like there's vibration, this energy that comes from him, which makes it so wonderful to listen to him. And and I think that's part of what you're saying. How when you become whole, when there's a sense of wholeness and all this trauma and all those different things, and now you enter a different vibration that somehow or another impacts other people.
Well, yeah, and I think it has to start with us. I think we're always waiting for other people to change, but we have to be the ones to create that, and it ripples out. People can feel it. Have you read the book The Celestine Prophecy?
No.
You would love this book. I'm reading it for the second time right now, and I just like everything that you're talking about, it makes me think of this book. I feel like you would really enjoy it.
What's the name of the book again?
The Celestine Prophecy.
The Celestine Prophecy.
Yeah, I'll email it to you. It's about this guy. I don't want to give the whole book away, but it's about this guy, and he quits his job working with challenged youth, children, and he doesn't understand what his purpose is. And so an old friend calls him and says, I have this thing called the manuscript. And these priests in Peru are studying the manuscript, but they have to hide it from the government because the government's trying to get rid of it. And in the manuscript that everyone's trying to protect and hide are these insights. And they're like mini chapters that teach about spiritual evolution, quantum evolution, how to see and perceive energy. I was just reading it this morning, and I feel like you would just totally love it. So I'm passing that along, and
Well,
anyone else who's
thank you so
listening.
much.
Yeah.
I'm going to definitely look into that.
Yeah.
That sounds very interesting.
It's really good.
I love how I've watched a little bit of you too before, and I love how much depth you have, and you
Yeah.
speak with such clarity and really communicate love and peace, and I think that's incredible.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
You certainly impact the world with your
Oh,
presence.
thank you. You're so sweet. I have truly enjoyed our conversation. Like I could keep talking to you for hours. Like I feel like we need to get coffee and talk about quantum, all these things in the world. But for the sake of just the listeners and for your time as well, I would love if you could just leave the audience with one core truth or insight or hope that our listeners can carry with them after the episode in regards to what we've been talking about today and what you teach.
First of all, I want to say, hey, listen, let's have coffee sometime. When you come back and visit San Diego,
I would
reach
love
out
that.
to me and yeah, I'd love to connect for coffee. That would be wonderful. I think the one truth, and it's hard to know exactly what it is, but to me, it always you got to start somewhere. I had a program, and I first started this meditation process. I had a program called Amazing Life, 40-day journey of transformation. It was specifically for Christians, for the background that I came from. And it was a 40-day journey. And it was meditation and teaching. So every day was about 5 to 10 minutes of teaching and then a 20-minute meditation. And I said, do this for 40 days. That was a challenge. I dare you to do this for 40 days and see if it changes you. And people started doing it. It was just amazing, the response, because they were just I mean, you may think this is crazy, but this has actually happened. There's proof of this. But one lady, she thought, well, this is crazy. Well, I'm going to meditate and so like this kind of meditation. But she had been diagnosed with cancer, brain cancer, and she said, basically someone told her, you got to try it and see what works. So she just sat there and she started to feel this overwhelming sense of peace and love. And 6 months later, she went back to the doctor, and they took CAT scans, whatever, and they said, there's no more trace of the cancer; it's gone. And so I think it's a very scientific explanation to it, that there is something about love. There is something about this pure presence of love that transforms your cells, revitalizes your cells. That's my take on it. That changes even your physical body, that changes everything. What you talked about, the trauma. So if we have all this trauma from the past, if we have all this negative energy still holding on, it has a crippling effect on our physical being, on our mental well-being, on our lives. So you asked me for one thing, and I think just get started. Do it, meditate or do something for 40 days. Make it a habit. That was for me the big thing. I had to make it a habit because it's like exercise. You go to the gym. Oh, I went to the gym. But unless you keep doing it all the time, you'll stop doing it at some point. And that's why the 40-day journey was pivotal, because I'm saying, I challenge you, I double dare you to do this for 40 days. And if it doesn't work after 40 days, don't do it. But once people have done it 40 days, they say, oh, this is so great, I'm going to continue to do it. So whatever you do, whatever practice you have, whatever meditative practice of coming to a place of inner stillness and peace and living in the now, whether it's just looking at the trees for 5 minutes or taking deep breaths for 5 minutes, whatever it is, just do it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, because eventually you will notice the impact, just as going to the gym will eventually also prove itself to be worthwhile.
That's beautiful. It's simple yet powerful. Just get started. And I think that's the hardest part. Like you said, you wake up in the morning and you know you have to go to the gym and you're like, oh, but it's so warm in the bed and I don't want to go and I'm comfortable here. And you just got to get up and get started and go out there. And I love that synchronicity in that example. How can people connect with you? Do you have meditations that people can utilize? Like what kind of resources can we leave the audience with?
Well, first of all, I just want to show my book here, Life Ascending. That's available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and many other retailers. So people can help themselves to that. They can also go to my website, davidyoungren.com, where we have a free resource, their meditation resource that people can get. And then also people can buy them. But what we're doing, what I'm really excited about, and you're the first person I tell this to, we are actually launching a Substack, creating a community around the meditations, experience freedom from trauma, mental well-being, and all the things that I teach in the book, by going much deeper into it and putting it into practice, creating guided meditations and so on. So that will all be part of the Substack. I thought it's the easiest thing. We have our websites. I design all these things, but nowadays there's so much out there that it makes it easy for people to be part of. So I promise, if they go to my website and sign up for that free meditation, they will get an email at some point where all this information will be on Substack and they can check it out for themselves. So hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I'm going to sign up myself too, and I'm definitely going to buy your book. Is it on Kindle?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it
I'm
is
a
on
big Kindle person, so I got to get it on Kindle once I'm done
And
with the
soon
sales.
it will be an audiobook as well. So
Okay.
that's
Good. Oh my gosh, David, it has been more than a pleasure to speak with you today and just to receive all of your wisdom. And I'm so excited to share this episode with everyone. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kat. You'll continue to be a great shining star in the world and communicate this life and light. And I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review this week's episode, and enter to win a free ancestral intuitive reading with me when you do that. And don't forget to screenshot and send it to me on Instagram. Thanks, guys, and see you next week.